Well, here we go. Welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. This podcast is just for contractors. Look, if you serve commercial or residential customers and you're interested in the business of the contracting business, then welcome. I should say welcome home. You know, you and I haven't met yet, probably, but here's what I know. I know you're not here by accident. You're running this business. You've gotten it to a certain level. You're looking for new answers. You know you need new inputs, and this is the place you've come. I want to thank you for that, first of all, but I also want to let you know what you're going to learn here is the business of the construction, the contracting business. If you've got bottlenecks, if you've got things that are holding you back, things that are frustrating you, if you also see opportunities, then this is the place to find the answers. I want you to take home the money you deserve for the time you invest. Today's guest is Amzie Lehman. We're going to talk about how to do pre-construction scheduling if you're a home builder or GC. Now, definitely connect with him and I on LinkedIn. His name is Amzie Lehman. His first name is Amzie, and last name Lehman, Lehman. Go ahead and connect with us on LinkedIn. Let me tell you why this episode's important, though. You know, there's a Stephen Covey quote, and you probably use it all the time anyways. And that Stephen Covey quote is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right? If you're not taking on jobs intentionally, if you're not planning the nth degree out of it, what happens is all that work in the beginning, you're skipping it. And what happens is all your work gets pushed to the end. When you're up against a wall, client expectations are different. Prices are probably different. You've got some times challenges, and you keep running into the same problems again and again. If you shift the curve back to the beginning of the process and do a little bit more work on the planning, it makes the job go super smooth. You're going to hear Amzie talk about a job he didn't even show up until the building was completed. He's the owner of the company. Now, here's something you didn't know. Amzie is one of my coaching clients who impressed me so much, I asked him to join us here on the coaching team. That's pretty cool. And look, I know there's a joke in here somewhere, but if you run your business clean on the front end, it's going to be clean on the back end. I haven't figured out the joke yet in my mind, but when I do, I'll pop it into one of the episodes. The other thing about Amzie, I just love this about him. He's positive. He's a positive man. He's a family man. He's focused. He's systems oriented. And really, just like the rest of my team, he's driven by serving others, not his own ego. I know you're going to love him. Look, there are simple systems to help you run the business. So those simple systems can help you make the money you deserve and then live the life that you want. Now, those simple systems will give you that quiet confidence to take this company wherever you want to get it to. If I had to summarize everything for this podcast, it's about the mindset of growth, the mindset of success for you as a business owner. Now, I just said the word mindset. So speaking of mindset, you ready for a couple of dad jokes? And you might ask yourself, oh, Dom, no. Why dad jokes? Why bad jokes? And why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? That's my style. I want to get you laughing. I want to get your mind open to hear what Amzie has to say. Now, since Amzie has a farm background, I want to we're going to do some farm theme here. Lots of you have farm or ag or hobby farm backgrounds. So some of these you'll be able to use tonight at dinner, right? Hey, why did the pig dump her boyfriend? Well, he was a real bore. You know, as a farmer, I actually hear lots of jokes about sheep. I do. You know, I'd tell them to my dog, but he'd heard them all. Just put that one in your pocket for a little while. You'll laugh later. What farm animal keeps the best time? A watchdog. Here's a question for you. It's a real, I want you to think deep about this. What do you call a horse that lives next door? A neighbor. You know, believe it or not, I'm an adult delivering these jokes and I'm laughing at them. I have a very simple sense of humor. This might have been some of you this morning, so you'll be able to tell this joke yourself tomorrow morning. What kinds of things does a farmer talk about when they're milking cows? Utter nonsense. What did the mummy cow say to the baby cow? It's past your bedtime. By the way, James is one of the listeners to the show. He's actually also a coaching client here. By the way, right now, James is in Argentina hunting doves on a hunt that he got from the Dallas Safari Club, and we actually sponsored him on that. So he and I met for coffee the other day. We were just going over a couple things as he was preparing for the trip, and he was telling me he really liked the cinder block joke. I wasn't sure how that one was going to go over, but he got a giggle out of that one, to the point that he told his wife, and she, of course, rolled her eyes and groaned and went, ugh, that's what we want, right? Hey, where do horses go when they're sick? To the hospital. All right. Yeah. Why do cows have hooves instead of feet? Because they lack toes. That's another one some of you are going to have to put in your pocket and keep for later. Hey, did you guys hear about the wooden tractor? It had wooden wheels, a wooden engine, wooden transmission, and it wouldn't work. Wah, wah, wah. Hey, I host this podcast because one day I would be proud to stand beside you and be your business coach. I have a team of business coaches. Amzie's one of them. I've personally hand-selected, trained, and supported all of them. I have very high expectations for the people that join my team, and I'm proud of every single one of them. Myself, I have room for one customer right now, which is very rare. The customer that I'll be working with one-on-one needs to have revenues minimum of $3 million a year. And all of the decision makers in the company need to be into it. Now, if you're not at $3 million a year, or you still want to do coaching, but you don't want to coach with me, that's fine. We've got Amzie, we've got Lee, we've got Jake, we've got Ryan, we've got a number of people for you to choose from. You're always going to be taken care of. But aside from, and if you want to work with me or any of the rest of the team, let me know. But I want to go into business coach mode right now. I've got 2 simple actions for you. Number 1, I'm going to challenge you. Amzie's going to challenge you, not directly, but indirectly, because you're going to hear something, or your mind's going to wander and come back to something happening in your company right now. Then you're going to think of a solution. And what I want you to do, what I need you to do, is take action on that solution, right? I want you to take action in the next 24 hours. So look at your watch or look at your phone. By this time tomorrow, you have to take one step on that one little thing. My goal, our goal, is that over the course of a year, you take 52 tiny steps, 52 little changes, one change per week. You imagine where your business would be if you were able to take and harness one small change per week. That's what we do when we work with clients. That's what we do in our own businesses. I want you to do that. Number 2, I just want you to think. I want you to think on this idea. Ask yourself this question. Am I happy being a contractor who runs a few crews, or am I ready to be a businessman who just happens to run a construction company? By the end of today's episode, especially this episode with Amzie, you're going to know the answer. So let's get to it. Oh, Mr. Amzie Lehman, how good to be with you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, Dom.
Always love talking to you.
Hey, you're the best, Dom. It's always good to have your fresh perspective of life.
Well, thank you. And, I'll return the compliment. You're a very positive and forward-looking guy, which is why you're here on the interview today. And you're one of the coaches on the team. People might not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. We're going to find out a little bit more about you here. So I'm going to ask this very abrupt question, Amzie. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready, Dom.
So please tell me, who the heck are you? And why is it that you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing contractors all around the world?
Well, Dom, so my name is Amzie Lehman. So I grew up in northern Indiana on a 100-acre farm, and currently we have about a 10-person construction company, and we build all kinds of stuff. And so I love the design build portion of it. Working with family is always interesting. And
yeah.
So at 15 or so, I was on a 100-acre farm, and I said, wouldn't it be nice to work on my dad's construction business? And so I worked there for a while, and then I got into 3D design, said, that would be cool, but let's see a house before you build it. And
neat.
Yeah, so do you want me to go into more detail, or you can?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, hang on a second. You said family business. I mean, because you grew up on a 100-acre farm. What did you do in the farm? Was it mixed ag? Was it grain? Was it ranching? What was it?
So we had cows, but it was primarily just more or less a hobby farm because my dad's heart was in construction,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and it
yeah.
was very nice place to go hunting and spend lots of fun family time. So lots of good memories.
Yeah. But you worked the farm with horses.
Yes, I worked the farm with horses. I grew up as a young Amish kid, formerly eighth grade educated Amish kid, and I don't know how I ended up here.
Now you're an old Amish kid.
No, yeah, I'm an older Amish kid. Yep.
Yep. Well, tell us a little bit about your business because everybody listening is really just like you and I. They're contractors. So let's get a picture of your company as it stands now, maybe how you guys started. It sounds like did you take over for your dad?
Yes. So myself, my brother, and my brother-in-law bought the company in 2012.
Mm,
But with my dad being dad and uh, still being very influential in it, it didn't really change until 2015 when my dad went down to Kentucky to build a full-scale Noah's Ark, and that was a
hold on a second. He built a full scale Noah's Ark.
yep.
That is pretty sweet. What is it an attraction? What's it called?
Right. So it's Ark Encounter in Kentucky, which it's a
Wow.
museum,
Yeah.
which we got involved through the architect who was a local architect here in northern Indiana, and we built actually a huge farmers market that was a couple hundred feet long,
Wow.
uh, and also another one. But then so my dad was leading the erection framing crews to pull up the big timbers and put those in place, and I don't know, a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
But the exciting part, so I was canoeing with a friend in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and just talking business. And then I realized we got to get this guy on the team. So I called my dad right then and said, Dad, we got to get my friend Eli. We got to get him on board.
Mm.
And I just talked with him a week or two ago, and he was talking about that, and which my dad was always telling him. He was one of the leaders. He said, every morning you got to lead and inspire the crew and the team.
That's yeah. Yeah.
And so he would tell the story of like the railroad with the east to the west, how they built that, and how they at maximum they reached 10 miles in one day. And that was before hydraulic.
Yeah.
And it was exciting for him to see that actually worked with the guys that were putting on siding. They like doubled their production just by having everybody work together and having that same
Mentality.
goal, painting that
Yeah.
picture. So
Yeah. How did Eli come into the picture?
um, just like that, he was a timber framer from Pennsylvania.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to tell a serious story here, but I'm just dying to ask the question.
Yeah.
When you built the ark, did you measure it in cubits?
It, it was the Egyptian cubit was like 21 inches instead of 18
I'm
inches.
so sorry I had to do that, but did you guys decide like we're going to do it as a reproduction? We're measuring this thing in cubits.
Yeah.
Um,
I think all the plans had feet and inches.
yeah, of course, of course, of course. So Eli started. No, so what's the path been of the company's growth? I mean, I know the inside story because you and I met because of coaching. You've been a client of mine for many years, but
Yeah.
everybody else doesn't know that story. So tell us how you got to where you got today.
So I always had an interest in growing. And if I get bored, I say, let's read a new book. And as more of an entrepreneur visionary type, over the weekend, I like to read another book and then Monday morning come in. And this story is from you, Dom, too. So Monday morning come, hey guys, a new idea. They look at their clock and they give it 24 hours. He'll be on to something.
He'll forget. Yeah. Yeah.
No. So I always I always enjoyed learning stuff and then hired different people, marketing people, and ultimately also hired you to help build my company and move it forward. And but sometimes I think this comes from you too, Dom. The best coaching or advice you can get is that other contractor you meet at a conference when you're waiting for coffee. You say, "Hey, how do you do that?"
Yeah. Yeah. Bouncing ideas off other peers. And
Yep.
it's hard to do sometimes. It's really hard to do, but you can make those opportunities come up when you do things like this or listen to this podcast. That's what this is all
Yeah,
about, is, hearing your story.
absolutely.
So yeah, continue on with your story. Tell us more about what your company looks like today.
Oh, sure. So there's primarily 4 people in the office and about 6 in the field, and then we have quite a few subcontractors to build a home. So our crew primarily does the framing, and one of the benefits to doing that is having our eyes in the field. It's a lot more quality control if our team is on there instead of 100% subbing it out. But it could be done, but that's how we do it. So I do, which I've designed. I love the design portion of it, and sometimes I'll forget. I had a new client come in Friday. This was an exciting one. Friday, a client called me, said, "Amzie, I want a meeting." So of course there was some. They don't just have direct access to me. They had to go through my assistant first. And so she had started asking questions, budget, and he got frustrated as he called his friend Pete that we just built a house for. And he said, "I want a meeting." And Pete called
There's a
me.
decision-making guy right there. It's a quick decision maker. Yeah.
And he asked, we just built a house. He said, "Would you build again with the Lehman boys?" And he said, "Absolutely." So Monday morning, he gave me a deposit and we're going to build his house. That was just Friday. So.
And this is where you shine. You're really good. I mean, I think if I can say the name, the software you use is Co-Construct.
A Job Tread.
Oh, Job Tread.
Used to be Co-Construct. Now it's Job Tread.
Yeah, sorry. My default is set. I always lag behind a little bit, right? But they just had you speaking at a conference because you do a great job of pre-construction scheduling. Actually, that's the topic today: how to do pre-construction scheduling as a home builder or GC. And that's what they had you talking about.
Yeah. So October, I transitioned because I had been doing primarily my estimating in Excel, but Job Tread did a very good of slicing and dicing and the estimating, but they have a very good success manager that you can schedule a time with, and they help you learn the software. But the good thing is they are not just somebody that knows the software. They actually have construction experience, like 10 years or so. He was a project manager.
Good.
But which it cracks me up because I just onboarded in October, and I said, "Hey, help me improve my process." And he just laughed and said, "Amzie, we're going to get you at the conference to speak." I'm like, "No, this is help me improve it." So, well, first he asked if he has permission to show the recording to their team there as an example of one person who's doing it or using it. So yeah, that's
how it started. Well, what I've always appreciated about you is you're very process driven.
Yeah.
You like organizing your, I mean, even in our coaching meetings, everything's very organized, very specific. You follow through, but you've got a process for things. So let's jump into it now. How do I do pre-construction scheduling? Like, walk me through the mindset, the approach, the preparation, maybe some of the pitfalls that you hit.
Sure, absolutely. So a long time ago, I learned a tool called Affinity Diagram, which it's very simple. You just take sticky notes. And so it all starts with the client experience of who is the client and where do you want to get to. And then you just start writing down the different stuff of what has to happen before that, what has to happen before that, and the details, all the way up to the first client call. So you map it out and you move that around. And if you sticky notes, you can easily push it back and forth and so forth and see where the hangups are and so forth.
It's so that's interesting. That you come at that called the affinity diagram.
Yeah.
And you just ask yourself, what has to happen before that? What has to happen before that?
Yeah.
Because that's the same tool that we use in coaching for what we call, in a much more boring fashion, the root cause analysis.
Yeah.
Right? You just say, what's the ideal outcome? What has to happen before that? and then you just keep marching your way back up the list. As a matter of fact, it is the most efficient way to build a flowchart of operations.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody sitting there sipping their coffee was thinking that this morning. How can I build a more efficient flowchart of operations? Or maybe just guys like you and I do that over coffee.
Yeah. Well, it's it can be a challenge to see the direct result of I have this problem, but the reality, the solution to that is having a better flow chart of operations for your whole company. And including from the very start, maybe it's not the right client to start with. Maybe you need a better, different client.
So well said. Having that right client, I mean, that's the first input, isn't it? If you've got the wrong client or the wrong site conditions or, any of those source issues, they're just going to echo throughout the job. I would say it's like having green peppers on your pizza. That's going to come back and get you later.
Yeah. And actually, this story might interest you.
Yeah.
So I've designed a project, submitted it to the American Residential Design Awards in Nashville, and voila, I won an award. So I went and took my family on a little
nice, congratulations,
motorhome trip down to Nashville.
Yeah.
And I've built this a simple 24 by 24 room addition that I barely bothered to take pictures afterwards.
Yeah.
But talking about the right client, you look at the one client that project fed my ego, but that little boring one fed my kids. And unfortunately, that's kind of a trend that happens too often.
Yeah. Making money doesn't have to be fancy. It's just doing what we're really good at doing a great job at it. I think Vince Lombardi, the famous football coach, said this, started every season by saying to his players, this is a football. Like, we're going to start with the basics. And so a 24 by 24 edition that's a square, right?
Yep.
I love how you said that's the one that fed your family. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Finding those profits. Well, listen, what's the driver for you? Sorry, I'm going to take back that question. What would the impact on your business be if you didn't do pre-construction scheduling?
If I didn't do pre-construction scheduling, the impact on my business would be it's harder to accurately predict what projects are coming through, and it's harder to have my schedule filled consistently.
Right. How much longer? So that's good. And then how much longer do you think it would take to complete, let's say, that 24 by 24 edition in this case? How much longer would it have taken to complete if you didn't have an accurate pre-construction schedule?
So the big one that comes to mind is when you go get permits. Sometimes the homeowner owns both parcels, but the permit people like to make you update your surveys and stuff. Yeah. And if you don't do pre-construction scheduling and those checklists, and right from the start, actually the project we're working on right now, we were ready to start construction, and we got to get the surveyor to do his, whether it's the septic drawings or the site survey, and then that can add easily 6 weeks of, and we could have started it 6 months ago already, but
that 6 weeks is real money. It's lost opportunity. You've got to keep your guys working or engaged somehow so you don't lose them to the next project. You got to keep your subs busy or they'll go to the next GC. So there's a real impact here of that slide in time, not to mention the finance charges and the carrying charges. Yeah. I wonder, I've never asked this sort of question before, but go back in time with me. If we look at Amzie Lehman 5 years ago, so what would that be? It's 2024 now. So 2019 Amzie Lehman versus 2024 Amzie Lehman. What has been the change that you've worked at to get you where you are today versus where you were, let's say, 5 years ago?
That's a great question. So if you are a solo entrepreneur, you can easily keep a lot of stuff in your head. But if you want to be able to have the company go on without you so people know what they're doing. You need to document that stuff, and it can be a challenge to keep it simple but effective. And the old me would have said, let's just go for it. And it was Amzie Lehman doing it alone, doing everything. But today it is a lot more. I have a team around me, and the goal is to make it so I'm replaceable.
I love it. So I'm replaceable. So let's do the 5-year exercise again. Who was the first office position you brought in on that 5-year journey? And who do you think is the next position you're going to bring in the next 5 years? Does that make sense? Like in 2019, what was that change where it stopped being solo, Amzie?
That's a good question. So I'm thinking back to when I first came into the office. My dad was doing a lot more of the solo entrepreneur thing and keeping a lot of stuff in his head. And so I came in more as a tag along when it wasn't all on me.
Right.
Then I just became more efficient. And then in 2019, the first person I would hire, if I would do it again, it would be a administrative assistant.
Oh, I love that you said that.
And somebody who can do the basics of that stuff. And I've somebody who can check my emails and
Yeah.
do the stuff that's important, but yeah, it just takes your time. So the next person I would bring in, so there's several different positions. You need a designer, in which you could sub that out if you have a could build a working relationship with a designer, and build relationships with an estimator, which you're a lumber yard, or you can get different people to do sub some of that out. Don't try to do everything yourself. And then project manager, somebody who the first preference is to bring them up through as a carpenter, a
right
leader,
or a
so
lead.
forth.
Yeah.
That can be, but you can also bring in somebody with just great people skills too.
Yeah, people and organizational skills.
Yeah.
You know, all of these things, whether you did them intuitively or not, you know, bringing in that administrator, people are worried. They're like, what would that person do? Do I really need one? But you're right. Checking emails, you know, every email I view as a 15-minute work order. Right? It doesn't matter what you ask me by email. It's going to take me 15 minutes to get back to you.
Yeah.
And so I've got to get rid of those 15-minute work orders. When you're trying to run, let's just say it's $1 million company. And Amzie, you know the revenue responsibility per hour exercise we do as coaches, right? And you and I've done it in your company, right? So it's a really simple math, but the logic is allows us to delegate to an administrator. You know, it's just take your annual sales, divide it by how many hours you work a year. So if your annual sales are $1 million, I'm just going to say that number, and you work 2,000 hours a year, which we're all laughing at because none of us work 2,000 hours a year, but I got to do the math with something. You know, you're responsible for making sure the company is humming at the rate of $500 an hour. So why wouldn't you delegate off work at the $25 to $30 an hour range to an administrator?
Yep.
That's the math.
Yep. That's the math. And it can be a lot of hesitation on how to do that, but you can set it up right with the proper security precautions and find the right person. It can be done.
Yeah, the right security precautions. Was that an inside joke? I appreciate that. That was very
you know, I've had that of where, well, there was a breach of security and it freaks you out, but it can be dealt with. And
yep. I mean, as you know, and I think we're all laughing about it, I had a breach of security too. Do you want to know what's even funnier and worse? Is that, you know, everybody knows me here in the construction and contracting world, but I'm actually on the board of directors of a cybersecurity company as well. And in my defense, this is the blame part. But in my defense, I was hacked. I was socially hacked. Like somebody came in not through a password they didn't have. It was a password they did have, but weren't supposed to use. It was supposed to have been killed ages ago, and we never turned that one off. So,
Yeah.
but you know what? There are password keepers. While we're on the topic, somebody might say, "Look, I don't want to have an administrator. How am I going to give them my JobTread password or my QuickBooks password or my email access? Because if that person gets fired, they're still going to have access." That's not the case. You can use tools like Dashlane, NordPass. I think there's another company called OnePass. I'm not endorsing any of those, but there's password keepers out there where there's one master password that you as the owner go in, you set up all of the actual accounts, and then it creates this electronic key. Let's say you're using NordPass as an example. You would just go into NordPass and say, well, here's the access to get into my Gmail or my Outlook. But if you're my administrator, Amzie, I just send you this special key that you can get into, but it's a blind key. You can't do anything with it. And then if you're no longer my administrator, or I let you go, or you quit, I just go and turn off your access and it's done. That key doesn't work.
Interesting.
Yeah. So those are password keepers. You can just look them up online. There's a bunch out there and, make your decisions. But I often find people operating out of that fear that somebody's going to take their information, which is valid, right? And do something with it, which is absolutely valid. But then there's tools that we can get around that. And there's a funny old story that goes with it. Do you know it?
Let's hear it.
There's a British saying that somebody throws a spanner in the works. Have you ever heard that before?
Nope.
So a spanner is a wrench.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody throws a spanner in the works. And the origin of that story, as best I can recall, is that if you've got a guy working on an oil rig, like a piece of heavy equipment, and you have to terminate him, you have to fire him, you don't do it on the rig because they'll throw a wrench down the hole while you're trying to do the oil extraction, and it's how they get back at you, right? So throwing a spanner into the works, you've just ruined it. So if you're going to terminate a guy, don't do it at the work face. Pull him off the job site so he doesn't throw a spanner in there, which, I didn't listen to my own advice, which is how we had that little email fun going out a couple weeks ago.
When I saw that, I didn't see it until actually you offered the apology. Then I went, look, well, this will be interesting. How did he actually handle it? Let's have a real live example of how Dominic handles that.
Yeah, how Dominic handles. How do you take pie off your face when there's pie on your face? The first thing to do is don't act like you're better than everybody else, because you're not. That's my first. I don't have all the answers. Amzie, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah,
I do have a lot of questions, and I do have tenacity, and I'm going to use that as much as I can. Right. So, anyways, back to Amzie Lehman to get it off of me. But
that's funny.
I know it's funny, of course. But so you moved from, let's say, 2019 solo, and then you brought on an admin assistant. And then if you had to recreate that path, it would have been a designer, or find a way to have a subcontractor to assist you until you move to a full-time designer, estimator, and then PM. And that allows you to build, the kind of business you've got now, right?
Yeah, in general. I mean, the project manager role, it's kind of like your heart and your lungs, which one you can't do without any of them. So you need to be doing all those tasks. It's just a matter of which one you hand off first. And so it also can depend who's available. And I just had a great opportunity to hire somebody. And so here's the fun part. The same way I designed a house, you can design your company. And if you get the right person in there, you can design it and they take care of this part. And the fun part is, which I do 3D modeling design. And so we finished up a project and I was never on site. So I just had which I have a great team of project managers and so forth. And so I didn't go on site until it was completely done doing the final walkthrough.
I love that part of how you run the business. You're so systems focused that you literally don't have to go out to the site.
Yeah. And so walking through there, it's kind of like deja vu. I know exactly I'm going to go up the stairs and this is how it's supposed to look, but it's the first time I'm there. And because you designed it. And what is exciting to me, you can design your company that way with your org chart or accountability chart. And if you get a professional like Dom or somebody, they can design that and help you work through that. The same way a designer can help you build your house, how you're going to best utilize it to fit on the site. And Yeah. And it's not a surprise that your company works.
Right? Yeah, and you see all the warts and you go fix the warts and you see where the opportunities are and you take advantage of the opportunities and everything has an order of operations. It's
Yep.
it's thank you for saying that. It's just a very systems based approach to change, or as we say, reinventing the plane, the business while you're running it, or repairing the airplane while you're flying it.
Yep.
Right? A little more dangerous on that one.
Yep. But the challenge, if you try to get it perfect before you do anything, you'll never get anything done either. So,
Oh, right. You mean chasing perfection instead of
yeah.
continuous improvement.
Right.
You just mentioned the plan, and you and I talk about that. It's the EOS, from Traction, the one-page strategic plan.
Yeah.
When I showed it to you, I believe it was the first time you'd ever seen it as designing your own perfect business, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I would have had, or like, I think, like you've said, whether it's EOS or whatever system you use, there's kind of a universal theme that they follow. But EOS was the first time I saw it boiled down to one page in a simple format.
Yeah.
So that's a great tool. Yeah.
What was your takeaway afterwards? Because you and I had that big, me and your partners had that big strategic planning call where we everything downloaded from your brains onto that piece of paper. But so that other people who haven't gone through that understand the impact, what was your takeaway after that?
My takeaway is that you're going for a 90-day sprint. You're not setting something in stone for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
So get it to that it's working and it gets you to the next 90 days. And as far as you know, it's for your 5 year or your 10 year or 3 year or 10 year, whatever. But don't try to get it perfect and then don't change it in the midst of the 90 days.
Stay the
That was
course.
my mistake. Stay the course and just say it's good enough, and then we'll change it at the 90 days. Don't try to
Yeah.
continuously change.
Yeah. Yeah. Having that plan to shoulder check has always helped me because I have
Mhm.
so many ideas. And then I have outside influences, right? I've got a client or
Yeah,
we've got a problem happen. And then so I get head faked
yeah,
by this other thing, this outside thing that happens, right? Maybe it's tax season and I just get it in my head all around that. But there's still a master plan that I have to go back and look at. Or actually, your analogy was perfect. When you're designing a home, you design it on paper first and then you just follow the steps. Same thing with a business. All of these other things come at us, and we have to make sure that we just keep shoulder checking that plan to ensure that we're on the right path.
yeah,
Yeah. What is the I asked you about 5 years ago, 2019, obviously.
yeah.
What is 2020? So we're 2024 as we're recording this. So what's 20? Let's test your math. The 5 year forward, the 2029 OMSI. What is that going to look like?
That's an excellent question. And we just had a job fair, and that was to, um, you're always marketing to clients, but we're focusing internally market to employees, make our company a better place for employees to that they want to work, which will
Wow.
having happy team members is going to directly improve the client experience. And so there's two ways to look at it. One, just having a bigger company does not necessarily equal more money. And, so I'm flexible. I have a like a big hairy dream of having like 5 project managers, and there's a if it organically turns into that, but I can also see where we would stay small and profitable and have great client experience, but it stays focused on the client experience and
Wow.
making so that we do what we love.
If you hear me silent, because I'm taking a lot of notes, I love this. Stay focused on the client experience. It's interesting that we all try to look at the world through our eyes, but we forget, I find, to look at the world through our client's eyes, our perfect client.
Yeah,
We think, let me ask you this. You built a 24 by 24 edition, right?
yeah,
Of square,
yeah.
right? What did they buy? What did
The
they actually buy?
they wanted it built now before their well, they had the baby before, but they wanted a place to put their kids in.
Yeah, they
And
wanted a safe, comfortable, long-term space to raise their kids.
mhm,
But we sold them a 24 by 24 box.
yep.
And so I love the fact that you came back to saying stay focused on the client experience. What was it? Let me ask, what was important to that family, if you can remember back?
So I asked them that, and I don't remember that specific one, but it was probably they wanted it done. It's assumed uh, that it's done right, but they wanted it done on time. And on that project, I did something a little bit different. They called me and they said, I want a 24 by 24 room addition. So I just went into my estimating software and put in 24 by 24 room addition, whatever dollar amount it was, and with the specs. And so I went out, looked at the project, and then made some notes. And then I told them, a project like this based on that can be X amount of dollars, but it's probably a little bit simpler than this. So let's drop the price a little bit. And so I went back to the office. But getting back to them fast with an estimate
Okay.
was beneficial. But unfortunately, I don't do that on every project because some of them are custom and then it goes longer than I want.
Custom home. Yeah, custom homes with specific needs.
Yep.
Yeah. The one thing about you though is you're a very good communicator. And you might not recognize that, but you're good at communicating the bits in between.
Yeah. Um, okay. Yeah, I don't necessarily recognize. I'm just me. So
Well, it's that you, but you think about the client experience. So if it takes a long time to put a quote package together for a custom home, new custom home, you're
yeah,
talking, what I've observed from you is you're talking to the customer in between. You're not leaving them
yeah.
hanging 6 weeks thinking, I think we're getting an estimate. I don't know. I'm talking to the guy.
Oh, that's what I strive for. Yeah.
Yeah.
To,
Fantastic. Well, Amzie, what's the big lesson learned? If the lesson learned from 20, what did we say? 2014, Amzie? 5 years
the
ago?
2019.
2019. So I went back too far. I'm counting on my fingers and I ran out of hands. What
uh,
if you had to define in just a couple of words, Amzie Lehman 2019 versus Amzie Lehman 2029, what would that phase of your business and life be called?
um, lots of different lessons, but the biggest one that stands out to me is I had a Christmas party and I had a painter paint a painting. But then for the little trivia question, I asked the clients, what does Lehman Construction do in the client's words?
Mm,
And they just use simple, direct language like build stuff, design my dream home. And if you would ask me, my old self would be, well, we do the pre-construction service, all the technical stuff, and then you have to go into the estimating and you lose people. So the big lesson is what language does the client actually use to describe their problems? What can they relate to?
right.
And then it's a given that I do all of the behind the scenes stuff and it's built on trust that I asked, this is the language they use is, I don't know how to build a house. I've never done it before. Let's ask my friend, would you use the Lehman boys again? And the clients don't necessarily say, I don't understand what you're saying. But we have to be very much in tune with that of showing them pictures and showing them simple, direct language. So that's probably the biggest takeaway I have.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm, as you know, from listening to the show, I'm a big fan of simple, direct language. I don't like to overcomplicate things. Just say what you got to say and say it in the words we can all understand.
Yeah.
Or, I like to be funny. So here's another way to say it. Why use a short word when a diminutive one will do?
um,
I know. I know.
yeah.
Hey, Amzie, if somebody wants to reach you in this big wide world, I mean, there's a couple ways, but how do we find out more about Amzie or about Lehman Construction?
You can just go to the website, laymanconstruction.com. So there's my basic contact information. And yeah, that would be the simplest way.
Yeah. And then if anybody wants to find out about you as a coach, obviously contact me and us here, and Amzie might be the right coach for you. And he's gone through the trenches and reinvented the business. You've seen the 2019, what did I write here? 2019 to 2029, Amzie. Simplification.
Simplification. And to the same point, the same way the customer experience, it's also important to know your own why, your own reasons. So you got to have both of them to own your own why. Why do you want to do that? So,
yeah, that's the driver. Why?
Yeah.
Why do we get up every day and do this?
Yeah.
Amzie, thank you. Obviously, people are going to meet you again and again. You've been doing a great job on the boot camp, where you've been another coach on there, along with Lee Miller, and then one-on-one with clients as it falls. So thank you very much, folks. You'll probably see Amzie back here on the podcast again. If you've got a topic you wanted to talk about or go into more, get in touch with us and let us know, and we'll peer into the mind of Amzie Lehman. Thanks, Amzie.
Hey, good to talk to you.
You too. Say hi to the boys for me.
I'll do that.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well. What did you learn from Mr. Amzie? Great interview. Great guy. For those of you watching this on YouTube, you'll recognize that there was no video for this for obvious reasons. Although there's not no audio. Sorry. There was no video for obvious reasons. My video and audio were there, but Amzie's audio only. But listen, from what Amzie talked about today, what can you put in place? You know, one of the things that we didn't talk about is his use of a particular document here that many of you have heard of before, and it's the job site rules. If you haven't downloaded the job site rules, you know, something to communicate your expectations from, I'm going to say, from the office to the field. For those of you who work in a shop, from the office to the shop, you need an SOP. You need a simple system to do that, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I want to read this neat letter that came in from, we're going to call him Eli in New Jersey. I mean, Amzie just mentioned a guy named Eli on his team. It's not the same Eli. I like to change the names here because I don't necessarily want to share somebody's personal email without asking them. So I changed the names. But here's the email from Eli. Eli's in Jersey. I'm not going to do this with a Jersey accent, boys. I'm not going to do that. But here it is. Hey, Dominic, I got to say thanks for the podcast and that blind spot assessment tool of yours. I got to admit, I was a bit skeptical at first, but man, you really hit the nail on the head with that assessment. It's like you've got a direct line to the inner workings of my business. I don't know how, but I hear you talk and you nailed it. Anyway, I think we need to chat with you some more about how I can take my construction biz to the next level. Is it okay if I have my GM on the call? You seem to have a knack for this stuff, so let's set up a meeting soon. ? Looking forward to it. All the best. And then he just closes with Eli. So that's great. I appreciate that. I love getting emails like that, to be honest. It's nice to know that I'm not just talking to the computer screen here. Now there's real humans on the other end. And so I'm going to be talking to Eli. You know, he's been around for, what was it? Because he and I have already spoken. He's been in the business for 18 years. And he's already doing a couple million, but he feels stuck. He feels stuck because he's been doing a couple million for a couple of years. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Anyways, maybe he's going to be the customer that works with me. I'm the one that I'm going to be working with has a minimum of 3 million in revenue. So if you are a business, minimum 3 million in revenue with all decision makers, so all partners or owners of the business into growth and ready for a rocket ride, let me know. If not, if you're not at that revenue range or something else and you still want to talk to us, let's do that too. Anyways, I want to talk about job site rules. So this is the download that I think adds more value to today's interview with Amzie. If you don't have this SOP, it's called a printable list of your job site rules. Not overly exciting, except to us, I guess, but it's a printable list of your job site rules. But it's more than that as well. It's again a self-directed sheet. So one of the things that I work really hard to do, and maybe I don't nail it all the time, is I don't actually want to tell you your procedures. I don't want to tell you what to do. What I want to do is ask you the right questions and find out how you like to do things. And then based on that, we make the system fit you. And, you know, everybody's got a different style, different personality, different way of doing things. Some of you are quiet. Some of you are talkative like me. We're like, we need more of that in the world, right? But everybody's got their own style. So that's why we try to really pull out of you what's you and then make the system fit you, because this is your business. So even this job site rules workbook is a workbook. You've got to fill in a couple of blanks. That's the work. But the value of doing that work is that it really reflects you, not Dom said, this is the rules. You print it off and put it everywhere. It doesn't, it's not going to do anything, right? That's not going to do anything at all. Even a recipe book. I don't know if you remember as a kid, I remember my mom, first of all, my mom would make fun of recipes. She's like, my mom's Italian, right? I don't have recipes. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. She'd take her hand, this much salt and this much that, and garlic, I don't know, as much as I can fit in my hand. And it's, that's her recipe. But her recipe is different than somebody else's. But does somebody else's spaghetti sauce or lasagna taste better? No. First of all, I could never say they tasted better than my mom's. Let's just be clear. But it still tasted great, even though it was somebody else, maybe my aunt or my grandmother, right? It's the same thing with your job site rules. I can't just give you a recipe and say, these are the only job site rules you'll ever need. That's kind of ignorant on my part. What I need to do is ask you great questions and let you come up with some of your own customized rules that fit you, your job sites, your clients, your team, your local market. And so that's why we've got a little bit of an exercise at the front. It's not hard. It's how long is this document? 5 pages. There's a cover page on the front, and the back page is tiny. It's a case study, little story. So there's not much here. Oh, on page 4 is answers that you could potentially fill in if you wanted to. So there's really 3 pages of work here. And the work itself is to understand more about yourself and how you want to be seen in the world and in the market and against your competition, and then come up with your rules. Then page 2 is a sample of another company's rules. This happens to be a gutter company. They make gutters, and we coached them a long time ago. And I took their job site rules. When you read this, it's called Fred Flintstone Contracting. See, I'm a fan of the Flintstones. But then you can take that and modify it to your business. Anyways, it's called a list of job site rules. It's a really good SOP. It's definitely one of the more popular ones here. But I haven't talked about it in a while. So I apologize for that. And I think it's time to bring it up, given what Amzie and I were just talking about there. If you want the job site rules, all you have to do is text me. And you guys know the number, but if you don't have it, just send a text message to 315-903-7853. And if you just say job site rules, you don't have to do anything else. Then I automatically know that's the SOP that you're looking for. All right. Well, I'll say thank you there. Now, listen, one more thing. I love doing the podcast. I love when I actually get to meet Eli. It's not his name, Eli. I just love it. I love what I do. I am happy to serve. So is Amzie, and so is everybody else in the team. But really, all we're doing is waiting for a day when I can have a cup of coffee with you or a glass of wine, and just actually sit across the table and talk. Until then, this podcast is a pretty good substitute, but there will be a day we get to do that. And I'm looking forward to that. Thanks very much for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.